This is Infosec 37, Poltergeist, and we're starting with Kaitlyn that wants to let you cancel your subscription.
Yes, I do want to let you cancel your subscription. Uh, so, gosh, this has been an issue for a long time. Companies have been very keen on getting you into their ecosystem, but make it a hassle to get out. This is the oldest trick in the book to try to milk money out of customers who might not otherwise give their money. This is also why a lot of people probably still have AOL accounts and don't even realize it.
AOL was the king of this.
Yes, America Online. For the youngsters out there, it was one of the oldest ISPs that became very popular. And anyway, so this has been around for a while. So finally, of course, several decades later, things might actually be done about it. So The Verge has an article written by Kim Lyons talking about a bipartisan, keep that in mind, bipartisan, I haven't seen that in a while, bipartisan effort to make it easier to cancel out of a subscription that you sign up for. So hopefully there'll be some laws on the books that will make it so that it will be illegal to do sort of scummy practices where you spend 5 seconds putting in your credit card number and subscribing. But if you want to unsubscribe, it'll take 3 calls, a trip to the main office, and 3 letters and a doctor's recommendation or something. So
yeah, I sort of thought that was already covered by the FCC, but maybe not. Anyway.
Well, I mean, it's supposed to address something known as negative option billing, where you get a free trial and then the company switches to like a full price subscription, and then people aren't really notified when their trial ends, and so all of a sudden they're a paying customer and they don't even realize it. So
yeah, that started happening to my students on Google Cloud. So
yeah, I get charged like 30 cents a month, even if I don't turn on any machine. I don't get it. I think there's a class action lawsuit where I can be making cents.
Yes. Well, then we've got Irvin with this awesome thing that you people have been raving about for a week, and I still have almost no clue what it is, a flipper. So
yes,
explain this to me like I'm an idiot, okay?
This is your Swiss Army knife.
It won't cut bread, and it doesn't have a corkscrew in it.
No.
Actually, it does. It does.
Well, yeah.
It does, Sam.
It is it's a portable multi-tool for pen testers. So with everything from radio protocols to access control systems to hardware, it does a whole bunch of things all neatly packed in a tight little box. So for example, it has a transceiver, so it can pretend to be things like garage doors. It has a signal analyzer. It has RFID to be able to replicate RFID. It has NFC. It has Bluetooth. It has an infrared transceiver, so like Kaitlyn said before we started, it can pretend to be a TV remote. It has a micro SD card for storage. It can be a bad USB, similar to like a USB rubber ducky. It can also do this I button thing that I hadn't seen before, but it's used in like apartment buildings to get in, so it can replicate those. It has a whole lot of different things all crammed into one little portable device that you can go around and do all the hacking.
Okay.
Right. So it's sort of like a jack of all trade for a lot of hardware hacking. But like a jack of all trades, it does a little bit of everything, but doesn't do any specific thing particularly well. However, I am looking forward to having the SPI / UART / I2C to USB converter built in, because that's probably one of the most common tools they use when hardware hacking. And so just having that already ready to go at any given moment in a little tool, I think that'll be fantastic.
So what is this thing? USB? What?
So SPI, UART, and I2C are very common communication protocols for hardware.
For wireless?
No, for physical hardware. So if you are like debugging a CPU on a router and you want to get like low-level access to like a command prompt.
Like a JTAG.
Sort of like a JTAG. Well, I mean, a JTAG is very different. That does like a boundary scan and you sort of send in commands and you get stuff out. What like UART would be very similar to an old terminal like Telnet.
Okay.
And I2C is the bus used would be more akin to JTAG. It's a simplified like 1 or 2 wire bus between various devices. So
Ah,
if you tell a device, what's my location, to a GPS receiver, you can send a command for that, and then over the I2C bus, it'll send the command back. So having that in a little box ready to go will be handy. So
this is why we need a hardware hacking class and a car hacking class, because I don't know any of this stuff, and I'd like to take that class.
yeah, I would love to teach that class, but yeah, I don't know how to get that going.
Yeah, well, no opportunities to add any more classes in the immediate future, but maybe in a year or two, I think. Anyway, Alan's got Clop.
Yes, the Clop Ransomware gang, which we've talked about before on this podcast, has been stopped, at least according to this cheeky title from Malwarebytes Labs. Clop Ransomware is not, pardon?
They took their Tesla.
They took their Teslas, they took their Benzes, they took their Lexuses, they took $180,000 and a bunch of other things. They also took some videos that they've posted on YouTube featuring Ukrainian police and South Korean police that were invited especially to attend the arrests. And because there were a number of very large South Korean businesses that were hacked by Clop and compromised by them, and great disruptions caused by them. And so there's been a lot of crowing about how Clop Ransomware gang has been stopped. It is not, in fact, according to this article, they only busted the money mules, who obviously made some money off of working with Clop, but the Clop infrastructure is still up as far as anyone can tell, and they are still active. And in fact, it seems that, at least according to Intel 471, One Threat Intelligence Organization, the main Clop actors, the real brains behind the operation, are probably located in Russia.
Yeah. And it looks like maybe we lost Alan's voice. But anyway, so they didn't actually get the brains, they just got the bankers.
Yes, they got the bankers and they got a few cars, and that's about it.
Yeah. Well, it's fine. I mean, I know Biden just met with Putin, and he said, how would you like it if we hacked your pipelines? And Putin said, oh, that would be a problem. So I don't know, maybe we're going to do it. That's probably the real answer. Anyway, this one here is the one I thought was awesome, Poltergeist attack. This is brilliant. So if you have a self-driving car, of which is everywhere, and Huawei's going to be running out tons of them in China and everywhere, it has a weakness, which is that, of course, a car vibrates. So when you take a picture, it blurs. So they have anti-blur technology that moves the camera to compensate for the motion of the car to smooth out the picture. So all you have to do is send it a pattern of vibration that will fool that, and it will add extra blur to the picture. And they find with like 98% success, even when tested against some kind of real car, not a real car driving, but something close to it, they can make the car not see something that's there. They can make something invisible to the car by blurring it, by just a sound attack, and you can even do it with other protocols like ultrasound, infrared, radio, magnetic fields, heat. So you could just make the car not see something and plow right into it, which is bloody awesome. So that's, I think, is a pretty interesting attack. And they said, they haven't tested it against real cars because the current cars are just early prototypes that wouldn't prove anything. They tested it against like laboratory setups, saying this is a fundamental flaw with the whole idea, and we ought to address it before the cars really start selling everywhere. And Teslas already have a problem with kind of plowing into things. Anyway, I think that's a very interesting result. All right, and then we're back to the phone network encryption was weakened from Kaitlyn.
Yes. So Vice has an article written by, I'm going to mess up this name, Lorenzo Franceschi Bicheri. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. Anyway, this author has an article showing, or at least speculating, that cell phones, at least in Europe, have weak encryption, not due to a bad design or a faulty design, but rather on purpose. And so how do they come to this conclusion? Well, these researchers were looking at the algorithm GEA1, which was used in cell phone encryptions for a long time now, since like the 2G days. And apparently like it was implemented in a way that makes it extremely weak. And so the first thought is, well, of course it's weak because people are, encryption is hard, maybe someone made a mistake. And so the researchers tried to replicate this mistake using, using non-secure random number generators and stuff like that. And they couldn't get it as weak as what they found on the cell phone systems. And so the idea is that perhaps it was not weak by mistake, but weak by design.
Yikes, this applies to phones in 2018?
Yep. So the GEA1 successor, GEA2, didn't contain the same weakness. However, all phones, as far as I know, are still compatible with GEA1. So if you roll back the encryption on the tower to that, it's essentially clear text.
So how many towers are still using that old protocol?
I would imagine a whole lot, given my understanding of a lot of this technology.
Even
usually there's a backwards compatibility mode in cell phones. So even if you have like a 5G cell phone, you can still connect to like 3G towers.
Yeah.
So
I just wonder if how often you would come across one of those older towers if you're, say, in America.
But here's the thing. A lot of the fallback happens when you get a low signal or a weak signal. So it's just like your Wi-Fi router, where if you are really close to it and you get the full Wi-Fi 5 or 6 speeds, that's great. But of course, if you are far away from it, it rolls back and uses something very similar to the first generation Wi-Fi. So
yeah, well, that's pretty awesome. All right, and Irvin's says you got to turn off your AirDrop.
So I saw this article.
Yeah.
And upon reading it, I kind of went, well, if you have the AirDrop set to on and accepting things from everyone, of course you're going to get stupid and silly stuff sent to your phone or your device. There is an option to either turn it off or set it to contacts only. So then only people you know can either send, or you just turn it off. I think one of those two settings would be most appropriate, rather than just flat out telling the world you need to turn it off and never use it again.
Yeah. But I mean, the concern, what, is that people can find like your name and phone number? Is that it?
No, the concern is just harassment.
Okay. That happened to me. I mean, it's a DEF CON. People send you pictures of Pepe the Frog or something.
Yeah. So either turn it off or have it to your contacts.
Yeah. When I was riding the train to work, I would notice a lot of people with their AirDrop on. So I would send them funny cat pictures and stuff. And most people eventually, I think, assumed I was sending them terrible, rotten pictures. But
so you're a dangerous hacker.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people have that AirDrop on and probably don't even realize it.
They do. I taught at a college where one of the students clicked something on their Mac and they were now projecting on the instructor's machine in another room, their desktop, because they had AirPlay on.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. All right. And so Alan's got a deep fake.
Deep fakes. Facebook has sponsored some research conducted by a couple of grad students at Michigan State University that enables Facebook to detect when an image has been digitally manipulated. It's a deep fake. Deep fakes, of course, being manipulation of images and video so that you are able to project the face of, say, Tom Cruise onto your own. And so you can move, you can speak, and it will appear as if it is Tom Cruise moving and speaking. And it's really very, very compelling. It's very good. The latest versions of deep fake technology are to the point where it actually looks believable. Earlier generations weren't so good. Now it's getting to the point where it's not so readily apparent to the human eye. But Facebook AI, through this research now, is able to do this using some interesting technologies that I didn't know were even possible. And one of these is fingerprinting the device that actually makes a recording. Apparently, devices, all cameras, digital cameras, have imperfections in their sensors. And it is possible to identify a device uniquely based on these imperfections. So, and with some very advanced artificial intelligence, network learning, et cetera, they're able to now figure out if you're looking at a deep fake image. So that's very, very impressive stuff. But I'm hesitant to give too much credit to Facebook in this situation, because where did they get all of their training sets, all of their data from in the first place? And I'm sure their business model is in some way predicated on having real images for real people to verify real accounts. And so they of course have their own commercial interests in this rather than interests in fighting, say, disinformation, propaganda that use deep fakes.
Yep. Everybody's got a bad attitude about Facebook these days.
And for good reason, I might add.
Well, I suppose, yes. I have to agree. Anyway, this one I was charged by. Years ago, I did a bunch of tests of cookies and found out that about half the websites reuse cookies. They never cancel them. If you steal a cookie, it's better than stealing a password. You're in there forever. But, you know, I didn't know it was a real attack. And now there's an online marketplace where you buy cookies. And it has just the effect is then you're in the account forever. And they got cookies for everybody for sale, from all the big companies like Google and Amazon and everybody. And they even have a browser extension that will let you not only have the cookie, but also imitate everything else about the browser that dropped this cookie. These are from malware infected machines. So that's pretty impressive. And it kind of reminds me, this is why ransomware typically works. Most of the ransomware gangs say, well, we just bought credentials. You can just go online and buy like a password. Then you're in the network, then you ransom them. And buying a cookie would be another way in. So, you know, it's, I remember this is a YouTube video that got most censored. YouTube blocked it and took it down like 3 times and then put it back. So I remember I showed how to steal the cookies from my Chase credit card login and log in without my password. That was, that's the one that got the most excitement as looking like dangerous. Anyway, but as far as I know, most websites are still vulnerable to that. Although the major credit card companies do have an expiration of time, which would be a good thing. So an old cookie can't be used after some period of time. But that's most sites do not have that because they don't want to make you log in again on your cell phone. The cookie just stays valid forever. Anyway, and then we're back to Kaitlyn with the FCC.
Yes. So Multi-Channel News, I've never heard of these people before, has an article written by John Egerton talking about the FCC. And what the FCC wants to do is they want to add cybersecurity as part of their background check before giving out an FCC license on a product. And the reason I bring this up is because we've talked about this before on the podcast, is that it would be great for consumers if there was some sort of cybersecurity logo on products to let people know what is or is not safe. And the FCC appears to be the first organization to actually make this happen. So what's going to happen from now on is that, or let me actually preface this. So if you want to put an electronic device out on the market, ideally it should be FCC approved. And that's why you see like FCC markings on your laptop or your smartphone or your blender, anything that plugs into the wall or runs electricity, ideally should have approval by the FCC that it's, you know, not sending out too much interference and stuff like that. Normally it's a very, or historically it's only been technical, right? So the FCC will approve your product if it, you know, has the proper shielding, if it's safe, etc. moving forward, they're actually going to be looking at where it's manufactured and if there's any cybersecurity concerns with releasing the product. So even if the product is very safe and has all the RF shielding, the FCC will not give approval if it's from a company or from a supply chain that could possibly infect it with malware.
I was wondering how they make a security metric. They're just looking at supply chain.
They're just looking at supply chain. They're not looking at, whether or not the device is secure or not. But if it comes from a vendor where they have concerns about its cyber security implications, it will no longer get FCC certification.
So this sounds like it's really just targeting Huawei.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, basically extending Trump's Huawei ban.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a good thing. I mean, the supply chain attacks, I think, are the probably most concerning thing in, at least to the federal government at the moment, is the fact that we could have devices that aren't just, accidentally vulnerable, or I should say, maybe not accidentally, but mishandledly vulnerable, but things that are specifically vulnerable to competitors overseas and to our competitors governmentally. I mean,
okay. Well, that's interesting. I think it'll depend on how they actually use it.
But it's a start. We're going to get at least part of a certification ensuring that our devices are secure.
And so this will stop us from using nasty things like curl that don't have a good supply chain. Anyway.
Exactly.
All right. So, and Alan's got Starlink. Or no, it's Irvin got Starlink.
Yeah. Apparently, the Starlink dishes go into thermal shutdown when they hit 122 degrees.
Why in the world? It's just a big piece of metal. Why would it matter how hot it is?
Apparently it does, and it has some stuff inside that once it reaches a certain level, then it says, all right, we need to cut it. But apparently you can only have it in the ground. It's not approved to put up on like roofs and stuff. At least from what I read in this article, that people have to put it on the ground, the dish for now.
So 122 degrees Fahrenheit is exactly 50 degrees Celsius, which lends me to believe that there's some sort of thermal sensor going off in some of the microprocessors or microcontrollers within the dish.
Yeah.
And so for people at home that don't know what makes the Starlink dish kind of, I guess, different, is that it's not a traditional antenna. It's a phased array antenna. So in a normal dish antenna, you would have a dish and a receiver, like a little antenna in front of it. And the way it works is it's like a parabolic dish where it reflects the incoming light, or a parabolic mirror, I should say, that reflects the incoming radio waves into that small antenna. But that's not the way that the dishes work in a Starlink dish. The Starlink dish is made up of a very small array of transceivers, microwave transceivers. And the transceivers have to work in conjunction with each other to send signals that constructively and destructively interfere with each other in order to create a directed beam towards the satellite. So there's a lot of microprocessing going on the satellite dish itself.
Did not know that.
It makes sense. Okay, I wonder why you couldn't put it on your roof.
Yeah, I read something in here. It didn't make too much sense to me why you could put it on the roof, but makes sense that this is happening now during the heat wave. That this has come up.
Well, the whole Starlink network is still like an alpha or beta, so hopefully they'll clean this stuff up.
Hopefully.
Yeah, all right. And then Alan's got phishing.
Yes, the Anti-Phishing Working Group published a report on the fourth quarter trends in phishing. They reported this back in February, but I only just learned of it. And it is a very interesting report from a reputable organization with a lot of interesting details on the workings of phishing and some of the trends. one of the major developments is that year over year, phishing has doubled. So it's gotten to be a lot more prevalent from just a year before. And certainly the pandemic has a lot to do with that. Other interesting takeaways from this report. The most targeted industry in phishing attacks was financial institutions, followed by SaaS and webmail, followed by
Uh-oh.
a pretty good distribution of the usual targets that you would expect. One really interesting breakdown is the domain registrars being used by these scammers, and the winner by far is Namecheap at nearly 1/3, 32% of all domains registered by the scammers. They use Namecheap, which has a pretty bad reputation.
I thought you were
even
going to say
before this
GoDaddy.
report. What's that?
I thought you were going to say GoDaddy.
Well, so did I. I really expected GoDaddy to be at least number 2, but they aren't. PDR, Public Domain Registry, is number 2 at 23%. And Google is number 3 at 7%. I don't see GoDaddy at all among the leaders. There are many, many registrars being used, but GoDaddy is not among the top 5. So good on GoDaddy, I suppose, and Namecheap, not doing too well, of course.
There used to be some of them that would give you like a 5-day free trial.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think anybody does that anymore.
I think there are a few that do if you're willing to jump through enough hoops.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've pretty much stopped that.
Yeah. Well, okay. And then I've got the second ransomware attack, which I thought this is pretty interesting. I always wondered, if you pay the ransom, what's to stop them from just coming back and demanding more? And apparently that's what happens 80% of the time. And half of those they can tell are the same people coming back to demand more money. That was the classic reason not to pay ransom. And this ransomware is just getting worse all the time. Everybody buys insurance, everybody pays the ransom, so they're fed and they get stronger and stronger. And now they steal your data and threaten to expose it to get the money. And then they just come back and demand more money later. There will come a point at some point where we have to fight back in some way. And I don't know if it's going to be our NSA hacking the Russian pipelines or something, but so far we're just accepting the loss and paying all this. Seems to be the cheapest answer in the short run. But it's just getting ridiculous. Criminals tend to do this. They make it worse and worse and worse until you finally have to do something about it. And anyway, I think the last thing we've got is Irvin. You should tell them about your workshop.
Oh, yes. This morning, DEF CON sent me an email saying the DEF CON workshop has been approved. Wireshark CTF is going to DEF CON.
Yay. Yeah, it's been a big hit. We did it at Circle City Con and the people were very happy. I saw them very happy. So I'm sure the people at DEF CON will love it too. That's a good workshop, very good for beginners.
Yes. And I'm so glad that they said yes to it.
Yeah, it's very sensible of them to say yes. If they say no, we might have to wreak horrible revenge. So I don't think we have to do that. All right. So that's it. And we'll be back on Tuesday.
Yes, with a guest.
Oh, okay. That's right. We do have a guest coming. Tuesday. That's
Tuesday,
right.
From Tuesday on, we're going to have guests.
Yes, it'll be Dan, who wrote a book, I think. Yeah, we have a guest coming.